Hello, welcome back. I'm Sean, and this is the Mountains Garage YouTube channel. It's a beautiful fall day here in the state of Maine. I don't know where this week went. I did a hodgepodge of stuff. I did a little bit of videoing. At the end of this video, by a viewer request, I'm going to tell some racing stories. I'll try to keep it brief. This week I've been focusing on putting my yard back together after doing the excavating and stuff, trying to be smarter where I put things, again, to make snow plowing easier. I've made it kind of difficult on myself in the past few years. This year I'm looking for a more streamlined approach. Snow used to mean work, getting called in, having to stay late, working on snow plows and blowing hydraulic lines. When you blow a hydraulic line, it's always the one that goes from the front bumper to the back. I don't miss those days. I gotta be honest. All I gotta worry about now is doing my own driveway. So that is like a vacation every time it snows. I actually look forward to it. If you live in the Northeast, you gotta love all four seasons. And we get them all. And all they have to offer. So I've worked outside for a week now, and I haven't swatted a bug. I'd like to say I didn't break a sweat, but yesterday I was helping my brother put some sheathing on his roof, and I managed, once the frost went away, to sweat. Man, that's hard work. Anybody that does construction for a living, once again, you have my respect. But let me show you the few video clips I did manage to shoot. Early morning, there's frost on my roof. It's 24 degrees out. Oh well. Getting into that season. One frosty dodge. I moved the bucket truck yesterday, and now I got to move the free candy van. Open this area up. Everything's going down here. The goal is to push snow down the middle, and I'm just putting things off to the side. Got 7 project frames over here. Trying to clear out over here in case we do any more logging. Sun's coming up over there. Beautiful day. You might be able to hear the heater running in the background. I figured it's a good morning to try it out, make sure it works. So I'm at the jet lathe, which has a coolant pump and a shield. I still have to lay rags down on the ground to catch the miscellaneous flying coolant, but today I found another use for these useless torque converter adapters. This one I just potted off. Potting off is not my favorite activity. This is pretty thin, so it didn't take long, and this metal is not hard at all. So I've cut it off because now it becomes the adapter I needed for the OTC torque converter flushing machine to center the hub on the flex plate, if you will, that spins the converter. Now when I drop the converter on it, it centers right up and I can just bolt it up. That was a good 10 minutes well spent. And while I was making a mess, and I had coolant flowing everywhere, I'm still working on this piece of solid that I start with that I use for one style of converter spacer. This was my original weld-on converter hub spacer for the LS conversion. I took a piece of solid, and when I put it on the converter, I use this to center it up on the hub and tack weld it. This style, I weld the whole center solid, grind it flat. You can't really tell anything has been done. And then it's a lot of work to make it out of solid, and I got thinking, why not make it out of a piece of tubing? So now I found a piece of tubing. This is much lighter, and I just tack weld it in 4 spots. Once again, after I line it up with this rig, and I just cut this piece off on the right for this, but the piece I cut off is thin. You don't want to overheat it when you weld it, but you can machine that up and also weld that on your converter hub. So if you have one of these, you can whack it in half and weld it on. If you don't want to run this thing. Tuesday night, I was relaxing in my chair, watching some YouTube videos, when I decided to checked the weather, looked at the temperature overnight, and saw that for the first time, it was going to freeze. I'm afraid that these three HD Pontiacs have water in them and didn't want the inevitable to happen. So I don't know what's happened to them up to the point that I took ownership of them, but I couldn't let that happen, so I'm outside. I have lights, but still had to wrestle these inside. So now I must strip them. Probably once again take them one by one and hope for the best. But before I strip the 400s, I want to build the Power Glide for the 64 DOT, which we're looking at underneath right now. And if you're looking at the same thing I am, I stuck the stock crossmember back in. You could actually just make a flat bar, bolt it here. This has been my experience. My experience LS swapping my Dodge truck too. I just made everything bolt in with simple adapters. So there really is no long-term damage, if you will. People get upset when you try to do what you want with your own vehicles. And I don't care. So in this case, I'm probably going to weld a flat bar on there. Punch a couple holes in it, and the tranny mount will be there. But I want to build the Glide. It's getting a Ultra Bell that I have, and a transmission shield. So before I go ahead and make a mount, I want to get the real transmission in here to make sure I'm dealing with the correct size or how much air it's going to take up. So parts are showing up as we speak. This is today's pile of stuff that came in. Combined with what I have and a few things going to straggle in tomorrow, I think I'm going to shoot a video probably this weekend. I'm not sure where to start because we haven't really talked about the Power Glides at all, so sounds like an opportunity to go in depth about the different pieces it takes to go from stock to better. I've mentioned in the past that my first car was an SS396 Chevelle. I only have one picture of it. It was white, and I'll share it with you next time I'm thinking of it. My second car, because I wanted to build the car myself, was this red 70 Chevelle SS454 I bought on a used car lot with no motor and transmission. This picture here is actually the first night I ever went to a real drag strip. And that's my buddy Bob behind it, actually. And eventually, I back halved it and ran like 1070s. It was still a street car then. And eventually put a tube chassis under it. And the first 572 I ever built. So we'll call this my first race car, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. Excuse the glare, but today we're going to talk about the third gen Camaro. I'll try to be brief, because there's going to be many stories. This is just one story. Another day we'll talk about its history, but in a nutshell, I bought it in 2007, and by 2008, 1 year, I completely rebuilt it. Surprising, and it may seem like I may not finish project, but that time I had just finished the garage the year before. It was pretty wide open in here, and I was excited to work on a project, and I knocked it out. I was more focused because I had less projects, although I did build a trailer at the same time. Anyway, I built it to run the Top Sportsman Series at New England Dragway. It's about an hour and a half from me, and ever since, well, when Pro Stocks, 500-inch Pro Stocks, were going sevens and had Lenkos, the Lenko transmission, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to dump the clutch and pull levers. If you're going to run a competitive class like Top Sportsman, which is high-speed bracket racing, that is an out-to-lunch combination, but I didn't care. That's what I wanted to do. So when I first ran the car, the first 2 years, I believe, I was still letting the clutch out. Eventually, I put a magnet on the clutch with a delay box, so at least on the reaction time, I could compete that way. But I'm still shifting it myself. It had a 5-speed in it, Lenko, so, and a 572. The second 572 that I built. Don't ask me why I built the same motor twice. Hey, sometimes you do what you know. And it was a good motor. So anyway, I am got my license the first year and everything. So this is the following year. And we ran, I believe, twice a month. It'd be a Saturday and a Sunday. So doubleheader weekend. We'd go down with the motorhome, park it on Friday night, and come home Sunday night. And it was fun. You get to know the people. And my wife especially really enjoyed it, and so did I. And plus you're racing. So I'd have friends show up. We had uniform shirts with random names on it. We tried to have a good time. We put more focus on having a good time than actually being super competitive, but that's okay. And they have 2 night shows, usually like July and August, and they had a national event, IHRA at the time. But in June and July and August, maybe they have 3 night shows. We were involved in that too, so those would draw big crowds because they bring in other stuff. And it's always fun. I mean, once the engine starts, you put your helmet on, you don't see the crowd, or you shouldn't see the crowd, but it's always fun to be, have a more carnival atmosphere than your traditional weekend where the stands are empty. So on this particular night, first round, I drew the number 1 qualifier. I forget how they did the ladder. Some nights we drew, some nights it was by reaction time, some nights it was by ET. But either way, I was running 770s, about 175-ish or more. And that's pretty slow. In Top Sportsman, you have to run a 799 or quicker to run the series. And I had just barely squeaked in there. So this was a twin-turbo LeBaron out of Canada. And I believe they're still running the car in some form. But this particular night, I believe it was running 660s or 670s. And I'm a full second slower. I'm going to leave first. So we do our burnouts, back up. And this guy had been racing Top Sportsman a long time. He knows better, but he was all spooled up and had both his lights lit, the staging lights. Now, in Top Sportsman, the rule, it's not just common courtesy, it's an actual rule. You have to courtesy stage, so you each have to light the top bulb. And then, whoever goes in from there, the next guy has up to 7 seconds to be timed out. But anyways, you have to both light the top bulbs before anything else happens. He was all in and up on the chip, spooled up, and I haven't even lit my top bulb yet. So you're not supposed to let things bother you, and I don't believe it really did. But all of a sudden I'm thinking, do I stop and make him back out? I know he's probably gaining tranny temperature, 20, 30 degrees a second. So, he didn't speak a lot of English when I went to talk to him afterwards, but he was a super nice guy. So I'm thinking I'll just go ahead and stage and do my deal. And I red lit by like 0.003 of a second. Now, it had nothing to do with the situation, or did it? I don't know. You can't take it back. If I could take it back, and this is one of the runs that go through my head because I tried to be very focused and do it right, and we had some pretty good success with an out-to-lunch combination. More on that later, but I didn't. I went ahead and staged, kind of let him off easy, and I lost. And you can't go back once it happens. And I ran right on my number too, so it would have been a super competitive run. I believe he spun the tires. Would have been an easy win. But I red lit. It was over. I went first so he could see that. Maybe he let out. I don't know. I know they had the transmission out of it when I went to go talk to him afterwards. And there's no way there was obviously a language barrier there. At that point, when I brought up that he didn't courtesy stage, he didn't speak English. Anyway, but hey, that's just one round and one quick story about the things that happen and the decisions you make in the moment. You can never go back. They were made, and that's that. That's the way it ended. So like, share, subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'm going to do this, I don't know how regular, but I have a lot of stories to tell, and believe it or not, people ask for it. So we'll see. I hope you have a great weekend. Next, we'll be talking Power Glides.